So it's the beginning of January 2025, and this camera is 11 years old now. Do I recommend getting this camera versus any other camera? Okay, so today it is even colder than my last video. So cold that my mouth isn't working very quickly, which is not great when you're trying to narrate your photo walk. Today I'm doing something very much the same, but also a little bit different. For starters, I have another variable ND filter on my Osmo Pocket 3, which definitely gives you a little bit more natural motion. However, this variable ND that I have on it presently might not be heavy enough to make that very bright sky not just blown out. That's one of the limitations of the dynamic range on this camera. As good as it is, no camera is perfect. The highlights and the shadows are just against each other right now. All right, so I ended up here at Dundas and Ossington. For some reason it doesn't feel as cold as it did where I was. Definitely still blowing out that sky with this ND filter. I do have a different one. I think I have a 6 to 10 stop ND filter, so I'll probably switch to that. Maybe that's better. Maybe this is just another shitty ND filter from some random brand that has terrible vignetting, and what am I going to expect from anything like this? My God. Maybe that works. I don't fucking know. So anyway, like I was saying, I am out with the Fujifilm X-T1. I bought it a few days ago at a good price, or at least a good enough price. And I got it because I am going on a trip soon, and I wanted to bring something that maybe I would care less if it got stolen and or broken. Not that I'm saying I would, not that I'm saying that I wouldn't care at all, but if it's that or lose the X-T5 or lose my A7 IV, I don't mind replacing an X-T1. What I am trying to do today with the X-T1 is to use some of the film simulations that I found online and do a mix of black and white and color, because those are the, well, those are what I do. Those are, that's what everybody does. Immediately out the gate with this camera, I noticed that I want my shadows to be darker in the black and white setting specifically. I like hard black inky shadows. I don't know, it's what I like. And looking at the JPEGs at the back of the camera, they seem a little bit too soft. So I have just turned my shadows from medium to hard, which is the hardest or the darkest shadows that it has available. So I'm in Toronto and we're in a bit of a cold snap. It is a minus 10 or minus 11 right now, Celsius. And at this point, I don't know, maybe 15 Fahrenheit. I can't do the math in my head. because I am too cold to think about anything, but I will post it on the screen what that means for my American friends. Of course, as I indicate that I am Canadian, I walk upon a Tim Hortons, but it's actually one of the more adorable looking Tim Hortons. It's not homogenized corporate nonsense Tim Hortons. It looks like it was built into an old house or an old storefront from a long time ago. Might actually be pretty cool for a photo. Can't tell if my highlights are blown out. Something I like to talk about in cities like this is how sometimes there are pockets where they hold on to the way the city used to be, the old ways, before putting a condo on top of it. And I find that very refreshing. Because, like, look how cool this is. That's ridiculous. So I've been down this street so many times, but I have never seen this alley. And this alley leans into an old building here that has some art on the table there. It has some art up on the wall. It's kind of hard to see with the reflection, but this reflection alone is worthy of a photo. I still cannot get over this this building here. I don't know how I've missed it. It's wildly, it's right next to a 7-Eleven, which in its own right has some interesting vintage looks, what with the colors there, but that building there, it's something special. Simply put, this is the kind of camera that I would recommend to literally anybody of any degree of understanding of cameras, whether or not you are just starting out or you are a professional looking for something to mess around with. The price point, like, I got this for $400. So, like, there you go. Something you'll pick up from me if you've watched this for a while is how much I enjoy reflections. Seeing more than one thing in an impossible field of view otherwise is, I don't know, it's just something I'm drawn to. So my hands are cold right now once again because it is winter in Toronto, and that's just super. So I have my camera, my Osmo Pocket, sticking out of the my bag, and it's probably not as steady as it would be if I was holding it in my hands. My God, it's cold. But it's the only way that I can keep my hands warm right now. So while out filming, I've had multiple people take a look at me and take a look at my camera in my hand and tell me I'm crazy for being out in the cold taking pictures. And it kind of feels that way. Not a lot of people out today. There's a few, but streets are pretty empty. How are ya? Thank you so much. So I got a coffee. I sat inside for about 15 minutes. I feel a lot better than I did. Still a little cold, but a lot better than before. I'm mostly just taking pictures of things today, not a lot of people. And I'm pretty chill with that. I know people have their opinions on what is or what is not street photography, and to them I say, bite it. Okay, so more about this here camera. Something that has surprised me is how snappy the autofocus is. And like, I know that when you compare a camera like this to a modern camera, there is going to be a lot to hope for, and that's fine. But comparing this camera to other cameras in its line, like I have the X-T1, and I find it a very competent camera if you only think about it as compared to its other counterparts. When you bring in other cameras like the Sony, God, really any Sony since like 2016, the autofocus is pretty weak, but within its own merits and compared against itself and predecessors, X-T1 is a very competent camera. And all that is said because this is pretty snappy. This now 11-year-old camera is quite quick. It's professional in that you can take beautiful shots and you can trust the reliability on it, as well as it's fully manual. So like if you are just starting out and you're just trying to learn, all of the controls are right there, right here on the camera. Everything manually on the top. Your shutter speed, your ISO, your aperture, if you have a lens that has a moving aperture ring. It's just like a great learning camera, even though I've been shooting for over 20 years now. Would I bring this camera with me on a professional gig? Maybe, but it certainly wouldn't be my main camera. I might bring it along with a faster camera like the Sony a7 IV that I usually use on my professional photo gigs. But in saying that, I used to bring my Fuji X-T1 along with me on those types of gigs. And it was great to have that as like a different mood, a different feeling. That's pretty cool over there. I don't think I can capture it with the 35 from this distance, and I don't feel like crossing the street. So there you go. So my verdict is that this is a very cool camera. Of course, all of that is to say that sorry, I got distracted by a cute dog. All of that is to say that I am out in pretty ideal conditions as far as this type of photography goes. In low light, maybe this camera wouldn't hold up as well, or maybe the autofocus would not be as snappy when it's trying to hunt in darker situations. I don't know. I'm probably not going to put it through that because that's not really the reason why I got this camera. But really, I'm just pleased at how competent the camera is in general. And I know that this camera was considered professional when it came out. So it's not like I'm grabbing some consumer or prosumer camera and just like hoping that it works out for me. No, I know this was like a professional camera 10 or 11 years ago. So you'd hope that it had have those types of features. And it does. Some of the things that it's missing, maybe you might say, is that it doesn't have all of the modern film simulations that you might want from a Fuji camera. Like, I love nostalgic negative on the X-T5 and similar cameras. It's got that, well, nostalgia, that warmth that you don't easily get without manipulating your photos in post. So that's something that's missing, but there are ways to skirt it a little bit. Number one, if you set your white balance to a lot warmer than normal, all of a sudden you have a little bit of that going for you. You can also tweak your shadows and your highlights to mess around with that. Do I think I took some of my best photos I've ever taken? Not really. It was just mostly a test. I wanted to make sure that this camera was going to work with how I work when I'm traveling, especially in a case where I don't want to risk having my fancier cameras stolen or lost or broken or something like that. I think I can trust this camera, and maybe because I can put my trust into a camera like this, I can take some of my favorite photos. I still will bring a backup camera, probably a point and shoot camera with a long optical zoom, something like that, in order to like fulfill those types of shots just in case this one goes down. But as it is, I think I'll be happy with it. So it occurred to me that I didn't do an outro for this video, and I don't always do an outro, but I figured since I'm here and I'm presently editing it right there that I could do an outro. So once again, I got this camera so that I could preserve the life of other cameras that I have. That's maybe take less photos with them, or maybe I don't want to risk losing them or have them stolen when I'm traveling. So I got this camera here, this X-T5, for cheap, and today was a test. Today was the first time I took it out and actually took some photos, and I really liked it. I thought it was a very competent camera. It was one of those cameras that felt quite intuitive to use, and I never felt like I was fighting the camera. So it's the beginning of January 2025, and this camera is 11 years old now. Do I recommend getting this camera versus any other camera? Sure, but it really comes down to what your own sensibilities are, or your own types of preferences within a camera. Do you want a hybrid camera? This is not the camera for you. Do you want the fastest autofocus? Really, no Fujifilm camera is for you if you want the fastest. But if you want to enjoy photography for the sake of enjoying photography, then this is a real contender, especially for the price point. Because so many cameras, especially Fujifilm cameras, their prices are inflated, like really inflated. And a camera this old, especially since it's the first iteration of the XT line, it should be only $300 maybe, and then XT2 maybe $4 or $5, and so on and so forth, right? But it's not. So if you can find this camera for $300, $400, $500, I think that's a good price for it, presently. Anyways, I really appreciate that you came along and watched this video if you got this far. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like or subscribe, because I'm always pumping out new stuff, whether or not it is filmmaking or photography related. I'm doing it, and behind the scenes I'm still doing it, so thanks again, and until next time, adios. Is that cool? I don't know if that was cool.